Think about a city that spent millions building a giant airport, one of the busiest in the entire world. Planes flying to Paris, London, Rome, and nearly 150 other cities. Then, in just a few years, almost all of it disappears. Gates go dark, a brand new building gets torn down, tens of thousands of jobs vanish. This really happened to Cincinnati. And most people think it died because of a storm, or a money crash, or because nobody wanted to fly anymore. All of that is wrong. The real reason is a single decision made in a boardroom hundreds of miles away, and it reveals something a little scary about how airports actually work. Let me explain. First, you have to understand how this tiny city got such a huge airport in the first place. Cincinnati isn't big. Only about 2 million people live in the whole area. Normally, big airports need big cities. But Cincinnati had something better than size. It had a perfect location, sitting close to the middle of the country. From there, a plane could reach most of America in about 2 hours. An airline called Delta noticed this. Delta needed a spot in the middle of the country to connect its flights, and Cincinnati fit perfectly. So Delta turned it into what's called a hub. Here's what a hub is. Instead of flying people straight from every city to every other city, an airline funnels everyone through one central airport first. They land, switch planes, and fly out again. Cincinnati became one of these giant switching points. Delta poured over $500 million into it, building huge new terminals. Then came the real magic trick. A new kind of small jet arrived in the 1990s. Before it, tiny towns could only be reached by slow, noisy propeller planes. This new jet was fast and comfortable, and only needed 50 seats to make money. Suddenly, hundreds of small towns that were too little for a big plane could get flights straight to Cincinnati. Passengers poured in from everywhere. At its peak, Cincinnati had over 600 flights a day and served millions of travelers. It became Delta's second biggest hub on the whole planet. But hidden inside all the success was a crack that would later break everything. And it was about who those passengers really belonged to. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Those millions of travelers weren't really Cincinnati's people. They were Delta's people, just passing through on their way somewhere else. Delta controlled more than 90% of the flights at that airport. That's almost a total monopoly. And Delta used that power to charge sky-high prices. For years, Cincinnati was the most expensive big airport in all of America. Think about how strange that is. The people who actually lived in Cincinnati couldn't afford to fly from their own famous airport. Many of them drove for hours to other cities just to find cheaper tickets. And whenever a cheaper airline tried to move in, Delta would slash its prices to crush them, wait for them to give up, then raise the prices right back. So the airport looked amazing, but it was standing on one single leg. It survived only as long as Delta wanted it to. That's the setup for the disaster. The trouble came in waves. First, in 2001, the pilots at Cincinnati's regional airline went on strike for 89 days. Flights stopped, Delta lost a fortune and never forgot it. Then, at Christmas in 2004, a snowstorm hit and the airline's computer systems crashed, stranding 30,000 people during the busiest travel days of the year. Then, in 2005, Delta ran so low on money it had to file for bankruptcy. To save cash fast, it started chopping flights in Cincinnati because that airport was expensive to run. But all of that was just the warm-up. The real killer came in 2008. And this is the actual reason everything fell apart. In 2008, Delta merged with another big airline called Northwest. Basically, two airlines became one. Before the deal, Delta's boss promised everyone that no hubs would be closed. That promise turned out to be completely false, because Northwest brought its own hubs into the marriage, and one of them was in Detroit. Now look at a map. Detroit sits only about 200 miles north of Cincinnati. Both airports pulled from almost the same pool of travelers. But Detroit was bigger, more modern, had more runways, and had valuable flights to Asia that Delta really wanted. So Delta looked at the two and did some cold, simple math. Why keep two hubs so close together doing the same job? It didn't need both. Detroit won. Cincinnati was now extra, unnecessary, and that was the death sentence. That's the real reason. Not the storm, not the money crash. Cincinnati died because a merger suddenly gave Delta a better airport right up the road. And the moment that happened, Cincinnati had nothing to fall back on. Remember, it was never really the city's airport. It was Delta's, and Delta decided to leave. What followed was brutal. Flights dropped from over 670 a day down to about 200, then even lower. The famous flights to Europe disappeared. That shiny $50 million building, the one they'd built for those little jets, was shut down and later torn to the ground. The regional airline that started it all shut down completely in 2012, ending decades of work. An estimated 33,000 jobs tied to the airport vanished. Companies that had moved to Cincinnati partly for those flights started looking elsewhere. The whole city felt the wound. And here's the part that matters for every other city out there. The same thing happened in other places too. Memphis lost its Delta hub. St. Louis lost its hub after a different merger. Cleveland lost one too. They all shared the same weakness. Each one leaned almost entirely on a single airline's connecting passengers, without enough local travelers to stand on their own. When you depend on one company that completely, you don't really own an airport. You have a landlord, and a landlord can pack up and leave whenever they want. But Cincinnati's story doesn't end in the graveyard, and this part is genuinely inspiring. The airport's leaders learned the lesson the hard way and decided to never rely on one airline again. They took back the empty gates. They welcomed cheap airlines like Southwest and Frontier with fair prices. The airport that once had the highest fares in America became one of the most affordable in the region. By 2024, it was serving over 9 million passengers a year, and most of them now fly straight to where they're going instead of just switching planes. Then came the smartest move of all, cargo. Amazon spent $1.5 billion building a giant package hub right there, filling the land with over 100 cargo planes. DHL expanded its shipping base too. Today, where that torn down passenger building once stood, Amazon jets now roll past, loaded with packages instead of people. And here's the wild part. The airport now creates more money for the region than it ever did back in its glory days as Delta's hub. Over $10 billion a year, more than double the old peak. But let's be honest about the cost. All that new success didn't bring back the 33,000 people who lost their jobs. The pilots and workers who built their lives around the old airline didn't get hired to sort Amazon boxes. The companies that left didn't come back. The city found a new future, but it never got its old one returned. So here's the real lesson hiding inside this whole story. Cincinnati's tragedy wasn't just that its hub failed. Hubs fail all the time. The real tragedy is that the city bet its entire future on an airport built to serve one airline's plans, not the city's own needs. And when that airline changed its mind, the city paid the full price for a choice it never got to make. The scary question is simple. How many other cities out there are still making that exact same bet right now without even realizing it?